Things I wish I knew before we moved to Spain. This is part of my Spanish updates, and I think I'll start a new set for 2017. We've been in nearly 2 years, but I just want to update some of the stuff that we've experienced that have made life a little bit difficult and would have been easier if we'd known in advance. First thing is bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is a full-time escapade, I would say. In Spain, paperwork is loved. Paperwork is everywhere. You find a lot of processes that you would do online, etc., are still done manually. And the bizarre thing is sometimes, like, booking appointments is done online, and then you still end up with doing some paperwork anyway. But a prime example of that is doing your residency. Residency involves multiple bits of paperwork. Sometimes it goes easy and smooth. Other times it can be a little bit more difficult. If you're working in Spain, had an income of over, say, €1,600 and just processed because you have pay slips, etc., it's quite easy. As long as you have your padron and other bits, not a problem. But if you're like me, my income is made in the UK, and then my social security and stuff should be transferred to Spain for my healthcare, because the main thing Spain wants to know is you're not a responsibility of a burden of state, but you're also paying into the system somewhere. Sounds easy, doesn't it? But even with the British website and the Spanish website, what you have is, in the UK, for transferring your healthcare, they say you must give them your residency certificate, and then they will transfer your healthcare. Spain, same documents relating to residency in Spain says you must have proof of healthcare. So as you can see, they don't tally up, and that's pretty normal. Buying a car here has a similar potential to be a headache, because of the way things are taxed. When you buy and sell a car here, there's tax to be paid on it, on the transfer. They're different depending on the vehicle. I also found that ourselves, it was much easier to pay a car dealer, in the sense that it's a proper dealership, to just do it for us. For us, we'd have to travel, take this form in with all the transfer paperwork, etc., and it was much easier just to pay this guy. The guy who was selling the vehicle actually knew. We went in there. He sat there with his emails and his scanner copier and did everything for us. What happened was he basically sent one document off to, I think, the town hall somewhere. Another document went to the traffic police. The stuff come back in an email. He then printed off this document saying that the paperwork's in process and should take up to 30 days, because legally I think you've got 30 days to get these documents. But it says come back in 2 months because these people are going on holiday, it's Christmas. So even in the documents it says you must have it, you can't get it. But also, if you're stopped by the police, he seemed perfectly acceptable to turn around and say, well, they're not there, they're on holiday. So we never had any problems though, and it did go through, and that's one of the few times I'd actually say that was worth an investment. Getting other people to process your paperwork, I would say, is a bit hit and miss. We've been ripped off, and I say that pretty much because it was true. But I know other people that have had some good people process their stuff for them, and a lot less than we were paying. So using other people to do it, sometimes they won't help you, in the sense that you're better off doing it yourself because they don't really know the system. You know as much as they do. And other times you're better off getting somebody else to do something if they know what they're doing. Because for the vehicle, this guy was a main dealer. He knew what he was doing. He does it all day long. That was fine. A lot of these people that do your residency and stuff, they just process a certain way. So when something changes in the system, they don't know. Until they go and process the documents and say, this isn't right, they don't know. And when they come back, they want to charge you more money to add the things that you've already paid for, because you paid for the residencies to be done. It's not your problem the system's changed. They're quick enough taking the money. And when I say that, it's not like you're underpaying. You're paying a premium for this service in the first place, so it should already be covered anyway. But anyway, moving on from that. Then we get into what else is worth knowing? Oh, words. Learning some Spanish before you come to Spain. Very, very important, even if it's the very basics. People in Spain, like anywhere else, appreciate people trying to learn their language, even if you're terrible at it. My spoken Spanish isn't great. My understanding of Spanish is way higher, simply because I study it on things like Duolingo, and I can photographically remember the words, and I know them. But when I go to speak, I still struggle to say the words because I don't do enough communication. That's my fault. But at the same time, I can still understand what people are saying. I just struggle to speak unless put on the spot. But anyway, some words worth knowing is yes, sí, no, which is normally said as no. Thank you, gracias. Very sorry, which is like, say you pushed somebody over on purpose, you say lo siento. You use like perdón. It's like excuse me. You know, if you're asking somebody for the bill, or say excuse me, you say perdón. If you're asking somebody for directions or something you don't know, you may say disculpe. Now, some of these words are regional. I also say disculpe is sorry in Portuguese. So you'll get people correct you and say, no, that's not right for this conversation. It's perfectly fine. That's what you want. You want that engagement because that means people are spending a bit of time saying, hey, he's trying to learn the language. I'll cut him some slack. I did it when I went to Social Security to get my paperwork. I basically practiced this whole sentence in my head, and then when I said it and I apologized in Spanish that my Spanish is not very good, they're just like, hey, he's trying. And they processed everything for me. Not that I asked them to process everything. I was just making them aware I didn't understand that much Spanish. But the fact was, it took that language barrier down because a lot of people don't like speaking English because they know their English isn't very good. But if your Spanish is worse, it's fantastic because now you're the guy that's made to look like you don't know what you're talking about, and then everything's fine. Other words: milk, leche, coffee, café, coffee with milk. Café con leche, with is con. And if it's and, they have this Y, or it could be an E. That would be like coffee and milk would be café e leche, coffee and milk. Bread is pan, butter, mantequilla. So man, as in a man, and tequila, mantequilla. Meat is carne, chicken polo, and that's enough for today. That's a lot of words to learn if you want to learn these off the video. My pronunciation is not fantastic, so I apologize for that, but also you don't want to be learning my pronunciation, but at least you've got an idea of some of the words worth knowing, because obviously these are things you're going to be buying and needing in the supermarket, whatever, or want to know where to buy it from. It will get you started. One of the things that a lot of people struggle with is finding property in Spain, because it's much easier when you're here. For example, a lot of the stuff advertised in my town, in La Mata, are for tourists. So they want the short-term lets because they have bigger money. Finding a long-term one is much, much harder, because in the 3 months that they rent out in the holiday season is equivalent of a year's income on a long term. So they'll take the short money if they can. So it's a bit harder to find properties to rent. You can use things like Idealista, which is a website that has a lot of properties, but it's worth getting on all the Facebook groups in the areas you want to live, because there's lots of little ones that people don't really notice. Things to do is go on Facebook and look for, name the town that you want to go to, and then put buy and sell. And then that'll get you in a group that'll be related to sales of some description. And maybe even worth putting a comment in there. I'm looking for a property for a long-term rent or whatever. Even if it's in the wrong group, you may get your your wrist slapped a little bit. But the point being is they'll turn around and go, this isn't for advertising for them, but go over to this group and they'll actually point you in the right direction. But that's the easiest way to find some of these groups, because they might have some funny names. It could be in Spanish, it could be in English, it could be in Norwegian, you don't know. But the easiest way to find them is actually to put like, say, Catral, buy and sell, because you'll get these groups come up. But once you're in there, you'll find there's properties for rent and long-term leases, etc. And that's the easiest way of doing it. Also, if you can get hold of the owners, then you can get a lower rate as well. Because there is like charges that the agents are charging. For example, say on this place we're in at the moment, they'd want about €50 a month. Just for being an administrator that fills in the paperwork once a year. So if there's no agent, that's €50 more, either the owner charges or €50 less you're paying, which benefits both parties. One of the things I will say about properties to watch for is mould. Ground floor properties, a lot of them, well, not many of them have DPMs, damp-proof membranes, that I've come across. So they suffer with damp because of the weather, because obviously it's hot up to 300 days of the year, so they're not really properties designed for it. So in the winter, you do have problems with mould, which means keeping all your furniture away from the walls so you don't get any furniture damage. But ground floor flats do suffer with them, and so do houses. So I recommend, if you can find one, is getting a property off the ground floor. It just makes life easier. You don't have the same sort of problems from what I've seen and heard. So that moves away from having those damp issues that could damage your entire wardrobe. Another one, getting back to cars, because I forgot about this. People don't look after cars in the same way as we do in the West. When I say West, like the UK, because I mean Spain's not east-east, is it? It's sort of in the middle. Let's just call it Northern Europe. You'll see so many cars are dented, they're scratched, they're abused, they're not really maintained very well. So when you buy one, you're buying a shed, as we call it in the UK. A lot of the time they are just run into the ground. If somebody's selling something, I do query if they're selling it because it's on its last legs. So be aware, second-hand cars are overpriced, but often poorly maintained, poorly serviced, and have lots of bodywork issues. Also, if you're buying one, be aware that because it's your new pride and joy, doesn't stop people bump parking against it. They just do it here. I don't understand why, but they just do. They don't even blink an eyelid in doing it. That's why we drive an old Volkswagen van and not a new car. And if we do buy a new car, we'll have to buy a garage first, because it'll be dented within a month. Just things to be aware of. And if you're looking for cars, coches.net. Coche means car in Spanish. So coche, C-O-C-H, is a car. So coches, C-O-C-H-E-S.net. You'll find cars on there, that's second-hand and new. What's the sort of costs on cars? I was looking at a Renault Clio last night, actually. €11,000 for a brand spanking new Renault Clio, straight from the dealership. A Megane was about 15,000, I think, and the new Mini Cooper, just under €21,000. So there's a few examples of cars. So you know what you're buying if you're buying new, just so you're aware of it. But same again, Facebook groups are worth looking for cars as well. You see a lot of cheap cars in the Facebook groups. I wish I'd found them myself before, because I hadn't really looked at, because I was in and out of the country. I was going back to the UK and stuff, and if I'd spent a bit more time on it, I'd have probably saved a fair bit of money buying from the Facebook groups. Probably have saved about €800 or something on a car, because there's a lot of cheap ones in there. So it is worth spending a bit of time going through the Facebook groups and finding a vehicle. But like I say, so you've got to make sure the administration bit's done. because there's taxes on them, making sure there's no traffic fines and stuff still outstanding, making sure they paid the car tax on it, which you can do at your local summa office. You can go in and see, take the document, and it'll tell you if there's any debt owed on it where they haven't paid the taxes for the last few years on the vehicle, because you could be liable for it. Although people say, well, you're not liable. Yes, it's proving that, though. Everything becomes bureaucracy. Like I'm saying, that is the problem. Bureaucracy. Next thing is finding work in Spain. If you're in a tourist spot, there is work around for the season. You'll get work for 3 months of the year. It helps to be multilingual, minimum bilingual. You need to be speaking English and Spanish. But if you speak French, I mean, where we are, French, Norwegian, German, those languages are welcomed, because we have tourists from those areas mainly. But I mean, up in Benidorm, that area, it's mainly Brit town, so speaking English up there is a bonus. But there is work around, and that's another thing to look in the forums and look in the Facebook groups for. Teaching English online is something you can do as a bit of an emergency backup. But you can also earn as much doing that as you can in a full-time job in Spain. There is things where people don't invoice properly as well in Spain. They avoid paying tax and social security by reducing your hours and paying you in cash and all sorts. So be aware of that. The system isn't as tight-clad as the UK is these days. You can see that it's like the old accountant where he's got one account for the tax office, one account for the shop, and one set of accounts which are the real ones. Because they fiddle the money, they're trying to avoid paying tax here, there, and everywhere. But the good thing about Spain is the weather's on your side. With over 300 days of sunshine, until global warming has a full effect. That's a joke, by the way. Who knows? But the fact is, although you've got the 3-month holiday season, there is other seasons that go on, tourist seasons that appear. Here in La Mata, we have the main holiday season, but we have the retirees coming here. We have people from Barcelona, Madrid. Then we have like the Brits coming over at a different time. You get the last minute holidays where people are coming over at the end of the season, so it sort of stretches out. I'd say our tourism is probably 3 months peak where it's jam-packed, and then the rest of the year it's sort of like 40% upwards, where there are different groups coming in at different times. You can see it on the beach, the different age groups at different times of year. Where kids have come on holiday with their grandparents, then you got the grandparents on their own, and etc., etc. It's very visual. But one of the things I will say, it can get very hot sometimes in Spain as well, especially in the very hot summer period. To the point where you don't really want to go out. You've got the aircon on, you're sitting in there, because walking out, you can get a bit of a sweat on. So be aware of that. If you're going to be working outdoors and whatever, there is certain times in the year where it can be a little bit uncomfortable. So if you're taking a job on, be aware that sometimes it will be a bit hot. But generally, Spain's fantastic. I mean, I'd much rather work in the heat than work in the cold, so no complaints here. One of the big things that a lot of people overlook, and you'll hear that when they say they spent 6 months wondering what to do, is you're not on holiday anymore. When you come here, you're trying to get into a whole new system, new language, adapting to the way of life in Spain. So you need to move out of, this is what it's like. I come here on holiday 2 weeks of the year, whatever. I want to live this life. It's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like that. And I even see it pushed in the media sometimes, especially on radio shows. They assume everyone sits down by the beach with a martini or something. The beach is nice to have, and I will say that we do spend a lot more time on the beach, but if I was living in the coast in the UK and it was as sunny as it was here, I would be spending as much time on the beach. The reality is here in Spain, is that you're going to be working, and some of the work patterns are different, because sometimes, well, it's pretty normal to work the mornings, have the afternoon off, and then come back in the evenings. There's a lot of that goes on in Spain. So your work patterns could be different. Now, I will say that bit in the middle, you can go to the beach, because obviously it's a break in the middle of the day. But when you're working from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., you can't then complain you're at work. But it all depends on what you want in life. I mean, Spain offers a fantastic way of life, but one thing is, you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to find a way to make your life happen and pay its way. But Spain is fantastic. It really is. People here are very laid back generally. Even with the police, I said before, they booked me an appointment and then forgot to write it down. And I went there and said, well, I've got an appointment today. And they're like, it's not in the book. And it's like, yeah, but I was here. And it's like, I said, but I'm flying to UK tomorrow. And they're like, just do it when you come back. And this is the police. If the police are just going, don't worry about it, that is pretty much how everything is. There's no sense of urgency. You get documents saying this must be processed within 3 months, etc. And then you go there and go, I need to press. Well, you ain't going to get an appointment for at least 6 weeks, but we need these other bits. And it stretches out. Nobody really bothers about it. It is laid back here. This is why when you go to get the padrón, which is like your little document that says that you live in a property, it's your electoral roll, there's normally queues there from about 7 o'clock in the morning at peak times. Worth processing in the winter because nobody's there. You've only got 10 people waiting and not 60 or 80. But what I find, because I have this little ticker tape machine with a number on it, I go in there, get my number, see how many ahead the machine is. If it's 20, 30 people ahead, I'll go and have a coffee and come back. A little bit of advice there. But also queuing in Spain is not about everyone standing in line. That's not how it works in Spanish. You always ask who the last person is. For a second. But when you're queuing, there's different ways of saying this, but I am not going to get into that because it's to do with male and female, and it becomes a bit more complicated depending if you're asking a question, etc. So we're not going to do that. But the one word you want to know is última. Última is basically saying last person. You're just like, are you last? It's just like última. And I know some people are going to go, oh, you should say this or say that. Look, this is basic Spanish. We're not going to go on to that because this is stuff you need to know when you first arrive. As I've explained to other people before, when you start expanding it out into entire sentences, people forget the key words. So this is why, we just talk about bread, blah, blah, blah. Because when you go at the shop, you might go, I don't know what to say now, but if you know your bread, your milk and stuff like that, it kickstarts you because they know you've just asked for bread. They don't know what you want to do with the bread, but they can point you, it's over there, and this is the same. Última turns around and says, who's last? Who's the last person? Because that's the person you need to watch in a queue. If there's no ticket machine, etc. Última. Because they don't queue. What happens is they go outside for a cigarette or whatever and everyone's just mashed up. But they all know who was the person in front of them. That's how the queuing system works. It's very simple, very basic. But if you queue jump, you'll soon know about it. So I always ask for última. Just like última, and they'll just go and point you at the person that's at the back of the queue. And that's the person you just need to watch. Because it's the same as if other people try and jump in front of the queue in front of you. They'll point that you are next. It's the way it works. There is a queuing system, although it doesn't look like it. But just be aware, things are a lot more laid back. Nothing's a sense of urgency. Delays are typical. And even sometimes you get people say, well, you should have done this last week or something. It's like, but you were on holiday. Yes, but you should have done it last week, but you were on holiday. It's sometimes you do end up in some of those conversations and they're like, okay, well, I've told you off, and they just move on. But these are the main things that are a little bit frustrating. But you get used to it. I'll be honest with you, everything you adapt to. So it doesn't really drag you down. It's more a case of just let it go over your head. Sometimes things aren't logical, but it doesn't need to be. It's not your problem. As long as you get through it and understand it, that's all you need to know. You're fighting against the tide otherwise, and you just make life difficult for yourself, ultimately, because it won't change. But remember that word, ultima. So try and link it with things like ultimate. This is the important thing. Link these words to things that make it easy for you to remember. Like ultimately the last person or something, so ultima. So you try and link the words to simplify it. But those are the key elements. Those are the things that I found myself could have saved me money, saved me time, saved me headaches if I'd known them ahead. I recommend Duolingo to get your basic words together and then move on to something more advanced for sentences. Thanks for watching.